From the Fathead Studio in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny.
Oh, there you are, sweet Jesus. Come back to Papa.
The highs and lows, are just can be pretty brutal, that place. But, I think that's what is so fun about it is the challenges.
I saw Will Power smack the wall out of 4 with 10 to go. He's still going.
Dixon?
No. Connor.
Oh, Connor, yeah.
Yeah, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, Connor, and, you got to pick a direction, pal, and I'll stick with you.
Oh, I don't know. You lose track about halfway through.
I go to move when it's full of methanol. Both of them are full of methanol. Big bang. I turn around and the glasses are smoking. And he goes, whoa, good thing you gave me those, right?
I'm Scott Dixon.
I'm Antron Brown.
Hey, I'm Ron Cap.
I'm Connor Daly.
I'm James Hinchcliffe.
I'm Donny Schatz, and this is The Skinny.
Welcome back to The Skinny. We have an exciting guest on here this week. How about a 10-time World of Outlaw champ with over 300 wins inside of that incredible sprint car? Hello, I'm Ken Stout, Rico Elmore sitting alongside. We have a full house here today. Of course, the track dude Michael Young back there running the controls. And in the studio with us, none other than Donny Schatz. We also have his mother in here, Diane. She's sitting alongside to keep him honest. And his niece is in here as well, Layla. So, yeah, we have a full house in the studio looking to have a good time. Thanks for taking the time, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Pretty cool stuff. Your accomplishments are absolutely second to none. Obviously, the World of Outlaw accomplishments. And if we go to Knoxville, just as impressive there with 10 more wins.
Well, it's been a long time. I've been at it a lot of years, and it's kind of hard to look back now and see there's a lot of stats that really add up, and we've kind of let them slip a little bit the last couple of years, but that's all part of it. Racing's that way. It's a humbling game. It's a fun game, and just glad to still be a part of it and still be competitive.
I know it took you 10 years to get that first championship. Needless to say, winning a championship at all. There's plenty that have chased it their entire careers in World of Outlaws and not been able to accomplish a goal. Took you 10 years to get there, but boy, once you figured it out, you put them together.
I've always been a little bit of a slow learner. I guess I should have paid a little bit more attention in school. They told me I didn't really apply myself all that well, but when I came out racing with the Outlaws, you dream of just winning a race, and then it takes you that year and a half, 2 years to win that first race, and then you're on to the next goal, and then you're on to the next goal, and when you get to the point where you want to race for a championship or realize that's what's important, and you got to be there at the big races, and you got to be there when the money's up. That's what it's all about, and it took me a long time to figure it out. I always had great guidance, but I wasn't always the best listener. So my dad always used to tell me I like to do things the hard way, and I definitely learned the hard way. So that's just the way it works, and
He probably never did that right.
Yeah, he did it the hard way too, so I inherited that natural.
Like father, like son. And speaking of your father, I know unfortunately has recently passed, but reading through the notes and doing a little homework on you, didn't realize you were a third-generation racer. Was your grandfather also a racer?
Well, sort of. Racer / true outlaw. He was. He had a chariot that he went and did a few things. He was more. My grandfather was in World War II, so when he got out of the war, he was wanting to go start a farm and get things going in his life, and that's what he did. But when we were growing up, he always had horses and cattle, and he did a little bit of chariot racing at the fairs in the summer and them things. I don't think they do them anymore, but that's kind of where the number came from. His chariot had the 15 on it, and that's where my father got it, and obviously I got it from my father. So it's pretty neat to, we've always been that, if you'd have met my grandfather, you'd say that we both probably got our fiery side from him because he was pretty competitive, and that's an understatement. So we're pretty blessed to have that competitiveness in our family.
Always in the North Dakota region up there in Fargo?
Yep. Well, we grew up in the Minot area, relocated in Fargo in 2000 to try to, better myself and try to get closer to things and have a little bit more of a life. If you know where Minot's at, Minot's a great place. It's a great town. We still have a lot of vested interests there and a lot of family there, but it's 300 miles closer to everything that we do in Fargo, so we still have the ability to get back and forth. But all in all, North Dakota is a great state. I mean, it's home's home, and it's not a place that I think I'd ever consider leaving.
Wow.
That's pretty solid.
That is pretty solid, man, because there's a lot warmer places for sure.
Yeah, it's a little balmy there of a winter, I think. I was talking to him, and when we were, I think the last time he was on, when we had him remoted in, it was freezing cold there, I think, the last time. So it's
we get some character building winners, that's for sure. If you can handle -30, -40 on the worst day, and if you get a little bit of wind, but man, it is what it is. It makes you appreciate. It's kind of like having a swimming pool. You know, you can't have it open 12 months of the year. You probably don't appreciate it. But if it's open 3 or 4 months of the year, you appreciate it those 3 or 4 months. And then you appreciate not having it open for the other 6 or 8. So
use it up.
Same thing with the weather. We get 4 great seasons, and you know, it's just the way it works. I enjoy snow sports too, so it makes it a lot of fun.
Snowmobiling, stuff like that.
Absolutely, snowmobiling.
Yeah, if you guys shut down for a foot of snow, man, you'd be closed 4 months out of the year.
Yeah, we had a late snowfall in Minot this spring. That was they got 38 inches of snow on a Saturday, and then they got another 11 on Sunday evening.
In April?
In April, it was. I believe it was April, and it was heavy, wet, and that shut things down for about 8 hours.
The heavy wet is the worst too, man. It's brutal.
Yeah, I was in Bentonville, Arkansas, down at Walmart. And the buyer told me, she said, "Man, you better get out of here." I said, "Well, what's going on?" She goes, "Oh, we got a huge storm coming in tonight." I said, "Oh, wow." I said, "Well, my meeting's at 5. Am I going to be okay to get out?" She goes, "Oh, yeah." She goes, "We're going to get at least 2 inches tonight, and you're going to want to get out of here before that hits." I'm like, 2 inches? That's like a dusting, you know? Yeah. They've got literally like the roads, the scrapers out that you excavate with and all that.
They're ready for it.
I mean, they're destroying the streets with it, because clearly the guys moved dirt before, not snow.
I grew up in Clearwater, Florida, and I will tell you that as a young man, you would hear people in the news, they'd say they froze to death, and I could never process that. I'm like, why don't they just keep moving? Why don't they walk? And I just did not understand. I'd never seen weather like you had, right? So as I got a little bit older, I became a truck driver, and I was driving across the Northwest, and I was coming back, and they were literally closing the road behind me as the wind was blowing. It was probably 15, 20 below zero. I had the heat on the truck wide open. It was a cab over, and I had snow blowing through the window, through the cracks in the window. It was literally blowing around inside of the cab. It was like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
People die in this stuff. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, it's just it's the way the ecosystem is. You gotta have that.
So once again, spending a little bit of time with one of the absolute best to wheel a sprint car. Donny Schatz in the house with us here today. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more.
Dude at Knoxville started at a really young age.
Before you were ever in a race car.
It was pre-10, so.
The Skinny is brought to you by Toyota. Toyota, let's go places. Lucas Oil. Lucas Oil, keep that engine alive. General Tire. General Tire delivers. And Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04.
Welcome back to The Skinny. We have Donny Schatz in the studio with us this weekend. And, of course, he's been racing his entire life. Some 31 years he has spent behind the wheel of a race car. But there was a day one. And, Donny, we love to find out from our guest how it all began.
Well, my dad came home for my 10th birthday with a go-kart in the back of his pickup. Back then we had there was a road course in town, and the family that owned the go-kart track and the local John Deere dealer, the Shriok family, they sold Yamaha, and that's where we bought all our snowmobiles and garden tractors and stuff. And they had this road racing go-kart, and my dad came home with it on my 10th birthday, and we started racing. And we just didn't have there wasn't a big following of them. I had to race with the adults, so he made me race in the back, start in the back and learn about the cart and doing all these things. And he raced a little bit of them himself back in the day. So, that's kind of where it all started. He'd take me to the races at Knoxville. We'd get to go to the Red River Valley Speedway to the World of Outlaws every year. That was kind of the highlight of my year, because they'd want to go golfing and go to lunch and then have dinner, and I was more about walking through the parking lot and watching work on the cars, because that's probably one of the most interesting things to see, is how those guys carry all the equipment and they tear it up and they rebuild it in the parking lot and fill the dumpsters with wrecked race cars and wings and keep going. And I'd get my yearly supply of racing shirts, and there was the occasional Knoxville Nationals here and there. I think one that I remember was sitting on the backstretch grandstand, and we were about halfway up, and they kept hitting. I kept getting hit with that damn beach ball, and that thing came to me the one time, and I turned around and I smoked it right over the backside of the grandstand and got booed.
Out of here.
But I was
got
more
booed.
I got booed. So my getting booed at Knoxville started at a really young age.
Before you were ever in a race car.
It was pre-10, so I guess I was destined to be doomed on that. But when I turned 14, we had a guy that my dad knew from sprint car racing around home by the name of Doug Slocum, and he owned a car and had a good friend of my dad's son drove the car, and they got talking one time, and he said, well, if he wants to hot lap it some night, bring him up to Grand Forks. So I came up to Grand Forks and scared to death, 14 years old, and they let me hot lap it that night, and it was probably one of the most interesting experiences because you're just scared trying to figure out how to get this thing started. You got to push start them and make sure the fuel's on, make sure you got oil pressure, hit the switch. And I still remember the first time I pushed the pedal down when it fired. I was like, whoa. Yeah, that wasn't the exact word I used.
Yeah.
I promised Mom I didn't use any bad words at 14. But, that's kind of how it all started. And that's where we really got going from there. We started racing. We bought the car and started racing with Doug Slocum, and we raced around North Dakota. I think one of my first races, we actually went to Missouri, to Sedalia, Missouri. It was the very first racetrack I ever got to turn some laps at in a racing environment. Because they could get started early season, and obviously we still had winners, so I got a little bit of jump start on the season. But yeah, we had a great start to it, and we've been there ever since. Just kept going, and aspirations kept moving, and goals kept moving from A to B, and find ourselves here today, still enjoying it probably as much as we did back then with just a little bit more experience.
So who was your favorite outlaw driver when you were a kid?
I was always really, really partial to Doug Wolfgang because Doug Wolfgang was a South Dakota native, and I was a North Dakota native. I think us Dakotans stick together quite well. He was one of my childhood heroes, but also if you ever watched Doug Wolfgang race back then, he was incredible. He wasn't really committed to the World of Outlaws or anything. He just went and raced and won, and some of the things he did, your jaw just dropped, and I remember, you kind of take after what your father does, and he'd be the same way, I don't think it goes without question. You have to. I always liked Steve Kinzer, Sammy Swindell. Everyone had a trait to them that was incredible and different, but Doug Wolfgang was kind of my guy. I mean, and then when I got the opportunity to race against those guys, when I started in '97, you take Dave Blaney and Doug Wolfgang and Mark Kinzer and Daniel Osowski. They've all helped me in some way, shape, or form, and they've all become heroes, friends. To this day, I still have, a lot to do with any of them that are still around, and even ones that aren't. So, I was always enamored by everyone. There wasn't anyone that I really didn't not care for. And I seen that back in the day because Steve was dominant driver. People didn't like him, so you kind of just had to bite your tongue instead of cheer a little bit.
Him and Sammy. They were hated. I mean, just
it's because they were dominant, and that's the way it works. But the funny part of it is, man, I never went anywhere where the stands weren't full, so people still came to see him, even though they were clearly hated. And
got to have a villain, right?
We get well, I don't know that you it was not manufactured. It was real.
Oh no, yeah, very real.
It was real. Those two didn't really like each other at times, and they were fierce competitors. I think that's all it really was. But
fierce competitors that would fist fight in the drop of a hat. Yeah, it would be on.
We get people come around still to this day and ask questions about what's different about today versus then. You talk about the good old days, and people wonder, what was the good old days? I say, well, you want to know how you had to tell Steve Kinzer you didn't like him back then? You had to go buy a pit pass or buy a ticket to the race and go and walk up to him and tell him. And there wasn't anybody with enough cojones to do that.
No.
Now, you just get on your phone and log into whatever social media account you want, and you can be the biggest belittler on the planet. So that's the difference between the old days.
Keyboard warrior.
The old days of today.
Yeah, you rattled off my top three. And I didn't know anything about them. I don't even know why I chose them, other than I think they were out front all the time. But Sammy Swindell, Steve Kinzer, And then Doug Wolfgang, I really liked, but I don't think it had anything to do with his racing. I think I just liked his name. I mean, Wolfgang, is there a better name,
right.
you know? But Wolfie, as I grew and learned more about the sport, man, oh man, what a driver.
He was a good driver, and the way they did things was pretty frugal. You know, he wasn't enamored by big trucks and trailers. I mean, if you ever went to buy a T-shirt from him, you bought it out the side window of his motorhome, and the trailer normally was just the race car and enough tools and spare parts and motors inside, and then there was 2 bare frames on the top that were rusted out from being in the elements. I mean, that's how he did it. He was he had his priorities in line, you know, and obviously we live in a different day today where we all travel in the nicest rigs that are, you know, mobile billboards for all of our partners, and you know, that's what it takes to keep guys. You have to make things easy for them to be able to stay on the road. But back then, man, those guys they really wanted to race. They wanted to race bad the way they did it.
So you love sprint car racing, huh? You think you want to do this for a living? Try 90 events a year. It is not an easy task. We'll ask him about it when we come back.
It's like a beatdown. You know, one bad night turns into another bad night, turns into another bad night, turns into feeling like your whole season is going right down the toilet. So
welcome back to the Skinny. Ken Stout with you, Rico Elmore sitting alongside, and we have Donny Schatz, who has joined us here, a 10-time winner at Knoxville, of course, the most prestigious sprint car race on the planet. He has been very successful there. Rumor has it, this guy you drive for, Tony Stewart, he said, I'd love to know how to drive a sprint car at Knoxville. And I said, well, haven't you asked Donny? He says, oh, yeah, I've asked him. He said, but he won't tell me.
That was true.
He's full of it because he knows how to drive it. He just likes to tell that story.
Yeah,
he likes being patted on the back, so people like me tell him, hey, you know what you're doing. Makes him feel good. It's good.
He was when he was in here, we were talking about Knoxville and you and your driving style and everything, and he was like, yeah, I go, and I mean, I've been with him before watching you, whether we were at Eldora in the suite or wherever. And he's like, I just don't have that, you know. And I mean, he calls it out, and I said, well, he's pretty good, so I guess you're okay with that.
Seems to be pretty good. Hey, going back to 1997, World of Outlaw Rookie of the Year, a vicious battle with Paul McMahon. What do you remember about it?
Well,
your first year on the tour had to be pretty exciting as well.
Absolutely. You know, you don't know what to expect. You don't know what to expect financially, physically, equipment-wise. You don't know what any of it is. And it's I've said this forever since I've done the first year, raced with the Outlaws this long. We're good guys that come and run with us, and they'll run good if they come to 10 races a year. They can go home and regroup. They can test here and there, or, you know, go race local shows. And they come and they'll have pretty respectable finishes with the Outlaws when they show up. And then they decide that they want to do the Outlaw Tour and commit to it and run all 90 shows. And about 10 or 15 races in, they're standing here going, what in the hell have I signed up for?
Yeah.
And it's because when you do it every day, you're living in the mix. You're living in the beat down. You're traveling. You don't know. There's no reset button. You know what I mean? There's no, you take the licking and just keep on ticking is literally the only way you can describe it. If you're able to go home for a couple weeks and regroup and you're not committed to something and you can just wipe your slate clean, but there's just something about the Outlaw deal that you have to be, you know, fully committed. And when you do it's like a beatdown. You know, one bad night turns into another bad night, turns into another bad night, turns into feeling like your whole season's going right down the toilet. So
in your three or four races in.
In your 3 or 4 races in, and you're wondering why you're driving 1,000 miles across the country to watch it rain or do this or this, you know. Sometimes you question, you know,
your sanity.
You could sit in one spot and probably race more and enjoy it more and be home. And you're going from motel to motel. And, man, nothing just ever really, you know, lines up to be somewhat simple or easy, no matter how prepared you are for it. And that's, I think, the biggest thing is there's just no way to prepare for it. Every person does something different. Every person's organized different. Everyone likes to see something a different way. So it's, you know, and I've seen it with younger guys a lot. They're, you know, I'm going to come and run and we're expecting to win a race or we're expecting to run top 5, and then they come out and do it. And it's like, no reset button, you know? So it's a very tough deal, but, it's getting to be where, you know, it used to be experience was something that would help you a little bit with that. But, man, in today's environment, it just doesn't seem like experience, you know, helps you as much as maybe what it did 15 or 20 years ago.
The traveling circus of racing, you know, if you will, for sure.
Jason Side said it best, the circus without the sawdust. And I'm like, yeah, I get it.
It really is.
And I mean, it's not like, it's exactly what you said. It's not like you can be done on a Saturday night and have all week to regroup. You're back at it Monday night, maybe Sunday night. I mean, as soon as you get out of the car and get in your own vehicle or, you know, however you're moving around, that's about the time you're going to have to figure it out between the next stop. So it's, I've been with, you know, travel with Tony out to Pennsylvania, which it's ruthless. It is completely ruthless out there. And those guys are tough. And I mean, they're you know, they've mastered the art of those tracks out there because they have a circuit out there that they can run, you know, nonstop. So when you come into their domain, man, they're tough to beat. And, you know, Tony's very, very talented and can get it done in anything. And I'm telling you, get sideways, start losing it. I mean, you know, with everything that's going on, I'm like, how about we just park this and go to the bar or something, not do this tonight. So.
Yeah, we've seen them out there. I've seen them out there at the Hampton Inn, I think it is there in Brownsburg, where, you know, Casey Kane's team, they'll unload the trailer right there in the parking lot and rebuild everything and get ready to go, start prepping stuff and get ready to go. Logistically, give us an idea for the fans that are home and they think, man, I want to be a sprint car driver and I'd love to chase that tour. Give us an idea logistically how you stay up on all the parts. You guys do tear up some stuff. How do you get them to your next event?
Well, that's it depends where your geographical location's at. You know, that's why Tony Stewart Racing's based here in Brownsburg, Indiana. All the guys live here in Indy. They all have homes here. This is where their families are. That's where the shop's at. So when you're based centrally like here, that's great. I mean, we raced in New York last weekend. They went to New York on Thursday night to get there early enough, and then they came home, and we're going to be in St. Louis. Obviously, Knoxville's next week, but if you're based here in Indy, you're very fortunate. And I think there's a lot of teams that have relocated here and made it home base because that allows them to be in one spot, to have a shop and have spare equipment sitting there, and that relieves it a lot easier. If you're in a North Dakota or say you're a Pennsylvania team, even, it's kind of tough. Other than we do go to Pennsylvania 3 times a year, so that makes it kind of nice for those guys. I know when I had my own team in North Dakota, there was times we had to have a second pickup and trailer just to bring stuff back and forth, and kind of had to be loaded for bear because you'd have the month of July. I think there was one of them years, 97 or 98. I think we had 23 or 24 races the month of July. So. And I just always plan for the worst. Like, yeah, we're going to crash 3 cars the first 3 nights. We got to make sure we're ready for this. So it just depends. And people are catching on to that, you know, to be located. I've restructured my life to be able to be home as much as I possibly can and get away from it. Allow them guys at TSR to do their thing. And they're obviously the best at it, to stay organized and stay on top of it. So we're pretty lucky in that sense to have that set up, because I think we got probably one of the best facilities in the country for sprint car racing. And now obviously we're
sprint car
and nitro all in one. So it's pretty neat to say we're really the only sprint car and nitro team under one roof.
100%.
We've got Donny Schatz in the studio. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more.
But I haven't been told I'm fired yet, so. But I haven't been to the shop yet today either, so it's possible today might be the day. You just never know.
He's playing golf, so you're safe.
The Skinny is brought to you by Lucas Oil. Lucas Oil, keep that engine alive. Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear, hardcore since '04. Toyota, let's go places. And General Tire. General Tire delivers.
We have Donny Schatz in the studio with us. I'm not quite sure how he found time here in the middle of his season. Some 90 events throughout the year, and in all honesty, some of these guys in excess of 100. But this guy's chasing, once again, that World of Outlaws championship. If you're going to start that deal for the racers that are out there and curious, how many cars, how many engines, as you sit there in the beginning of January, let's say you prep through December, and you're getting ready for the first event the next year, how much stuff is sitting there in the shop ready to go?
Well, I think when I came to join TSR in 2007, Jimmy Carr's philosophy was they wanted to have 8 cars on the ground ready to go at all times. That way, if something happened, the worst case scenario, you're always in a good spot. And we found ourselves at the end of the season having, 3, sometimes 4 cars left over that were, you were robbing parts off, for this or that. And obviously things change with the frames and safety requirements and this and that. So sometimes we were selling stuff that was brand new, because it made more sense than trying to tear it apart and rebuild something that was already new. So I think, we've been very fortunate to not have to get into tearing all that much stuff up, but there's plenty of guys that do. And, the way these cars are built now, the cars are built, they're like throwaway cars. You can bend them and straighten them, but really racing at this level, it's not really something that, to me, is conducive for what's out there. I mean, we got some pretty good payoffs, and the championship means a lot. So, we've seen it come down to 4 points one season to run second. So that 4 points is just 2 positions on the racetrack. So if you're not giving it your all one night, it's kind of silly to not, to take something and say, question whether it's bent or not. You replace it. So I think that's probably a good magic number if someone was going to do it. The problem is the motors. You just don't know what to expect. We shoot to run our motors 10 to 12 races, barring nothing happening. And in today's environment, it's hard to get engine parts. It's hard to get things rebuilt. So, but then you have different motors for different tracks. Now everybody has short track motors and big track motors and intermediate motors, and it's just part of the game. So, I think the hardest part, physically and financially, is trying to keep up with the motor stuff. That's I wish there was an answer to saying, hey, this is what they all should be, and we'd still have good racing and it'd be less expensive for anyone. But if I had those answers, I guess I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be operating my own series somewhere.
I mean, fortunately, you're with a guy. I think we should talk about this as well, with Tony Stewart, who I'm sure, for the most part, provides you with the best equipment, the tools, the job you need to get it done. But you've been with him, if I'm not mistaken, 14 years, going on 15 years?
Something like 15 years now. Yeah, it's been quite a while. It's normally drivers don't stay put that long, but I haven't been told I'm fired yet. So, but I haven't been to the shop yet today either. So it's possible today might be the day. You just never know.
He's playing golf, so you're safe.
Well, that don't mean you're safe if he's playing. Is he playing anywhere close to here?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's been a great 15 years. We've had a ton of success together. And obviously we've had challenges come our way too. I remember when the Ford Performance thing was announced into the Cup team that he had at Stewart Haas. I think everyone freaked out. I remember Rick Warner was freaking out, Ron Shaver was freaking out, and they were all going, "We're not doing that. We're not doing that."
Because there really hasn't been one.
It had nothing to do with sprint car racing. This had to do with just NASCAR. So everybody just assumed that this was going to be the trickle down effect to us in the sprint car world, and we had no clue. And I just kind of stood there. I remember growing up watching a Ford sprint car. Casey Luna had it, so I just kind of stood back and bit my tongue and didn't say anything. And obviously, it came down our path. It transpired, and it wasn't Ford pushing it. It was all Tony doing the right thing by his partners, which he always does. And it's obviously been a challenge. I think anybody that's never done anything like that, start from the ground up with a CAD drawing and do this, and you can't really base it off anything. You just have an idea and some parameters. Yeah. I will say there's a lot of it that's been ultimately super rewarding to be a part of, and we've had some not so great times with it, but when you sit and look back on it, it really isn't related to anything that Ford did, or it's just some of our bad communication. We had, there was restructuring within the team. There's all these things. Who are we listening to for data? Are we listening to me? Are we listening to this guy? Are we listening to an engineer? And sometimes you just don't know it. So we can carry some of the blame ourselves on a lot of that and not point fingers. But just glad to be in a position today where we can look back and say, yeah, the worst is way behind us. It's an awesome engineering feat, an awesome tool, and we have something that's pretty competitive and getting better every day. So I know that it's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and obviously Hundo's from the boss, because he's the one that's responsible for the engine program. So it's been quite a challenge, but it's pretty rewarding to do something that, that's what we do when you race with your partner. Sometimes they give you a challenge that it seems impossible, and here you are, you finding yourself, it's not always easy. It's probably a lot more than what anyone expected, but at the end of it, it's pretty rewarding when things get to where you want them to be, and there's going to be something pretty spectacular there at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and I watched you guys at Knoxville go through those struggles and watch the team changing engines, and you put a short track engine in ultimately at the end, because maybe that was the last one. And watching you run up through the field was probably one of the more exciting things of the Knoxville Nationals, because it was like a man on a mission, like it had enough. I mean, take it out, engine and practice, something happens. Take it out, hot laps, something happens. I mean, it was like, I finally left the suite, by the way, because that was getting a little tense in there for me. So I was like,
as I recall,
you're
you guys,
meaning the not nationals.
You guys made the announcement you're going to run for it at the Nationals. Is that correct?
No, we the Ford actually went in the car. Like, my years are kind of running together here, but we were in a championship battle towards the last 10 races of, I think it was 19?
19.
It was 19. Yep. We had 10 races to go. We were racing with Brad and the KKR guys. We had a chance to win the championship, and we had some struggles with motor stuff, and the Ford was ready, and Tony and I had a conversation about it, and I was like, well, we're going to throw something at it, or we're going to go down in flames. Let's throw it. That's how you find out. So we went at it, and
Williams Grove, right?
Yeah, we ended up, I think we won Williams Grove. We won Port Royal. The second night rained out. I wish it wouldn't have rained out that second night, but that's just the way it goes. But it came down, I believe we lost the championship by 4 points. So we were pretty confident in the future of what it was. But man, there's just so many avenues that have got curved roads here and there that have happened since then that we've gotten all straightened out. And it's pretty easy to do when you got one person working on one engine, when the rest of the country's racing. There's however many sprint cars and drivers are across the country working on the same thing. So you can take 350 people to perfect something better than you can one with one. So it's kind of it feels pretty good to be in a good spot now.
The trials and tribulations of one of the absolute best who's made a living out on the road. We'll pick his brain a little bit more when we come back.
Went to speed up down the backstretch and went into 3, and the throttle didn't come back, so I drove straight into the fence and crashed.
Donny Schatz on us this week. We're getting the skinny behind this guy and how he made it to where he is now. I'm going to take him back to when he was a young child, though. How about something a little different as I was digging up some information on him? I want to hear about the Mammoth Belgian draft horses. Do you remember them?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We grew up around horses. Horses have been a big part of our life. Both my parents, grew up on farms. My dad left at an awful young age to do other things. And, we had horses always growing up. Belgians were like the 410s. You know what I mean? They were the big,
right.
bad boys. I remember on my dad's 40th birthday, I was 10, and all the guys that were on back then, they had like an East-West or North-South Budweiser Clydesdale team. And we knew all those people, the draft horse people. So they came for my dad's 40th. So, naturally, I had to drive them around at 10 years old in the van because they were all having a good time. But we knew all those people, and we enjoyed them. I think if you've ever been around horses, draft horses are definitely a special breed, and it was something to grow up around. I actually, that's, if you see one of my eyes that's a little bit goofy, it's because I got kicked by a horse when I was 5. In Britt, Iowa, we were at a horse show, and it was 100 and some degrees, and we had these great big fans blowing on the horses, and me and my buddy were doing paper airplanes, and one went up behind one of our horses, and I went up, and it kicked me and crushed my nose, and my eye recoiled. And so if you see that little bit of lazy eye, that's what it's from. So I'm pretty fortunate to have not lost my eye, and I struggled with double vision for a couple years, but finally was able to get past all that. So horses have been kind of I guess a love-hate relationship for me. After that, I wasn't, I drove them at a young age. I remember driving at 5 at the Denver Stock Show, and you'll probably see a lot of pictures if you dig all over the country of us showing. We had our own.
You're going to dig and give them for us because we need that on.
we want to show the people at home what we're talking about.
We'll get Mom to get it for us.
We got some stuff, and there's a lot of those. So we enjoyed that for a lot of years. But, when it come time to be, I was in my teens, and my sisters were 2 years younger, exactly almost right to the day. We were just getting into different things, and the horses got kind of put on the wayside. It was, it was my mom and dad's love. I really believe that's how they were able to make, their business as successful as they did, because they were in the truck stop business and had unique type of meals at their restaurants and had a lot of Canadian traffic. So we'd go to a lot of Canadian horse shows, and you'd see a lot of truck drivers across the country. So they used the marketing of that back then to help their business succeed, just like we do with our marketing partners in racing today, just on a little different level. So it's pretty neat to have been a part of that. And they walked away from what they love to do so that I could do what I wanted to do. And the girls, my youngest sisters, were both involved in showing horses at a quarter horse level, and obviously went on to do different things. So it was pretty neat to be a part of. And we still have the wagon from back then. That's the unique thing about horse people is you don't get online and buy something. They make it. They're like, I want to make that. I remember as a kid, you couldn't buy horseshoes for draft horses. So you know what you did? You went to your local steel place and you bought 1/2-inch thick, 1-inch wide steel stock, and you went and you fired up your forge in your building, and you heated it up and you shaped it, and you had anvils and hammers. And I used to do that with my dad a couple nights a week, and he taught me how to weld and do all that. So it's life experiences with that they're that way. And the wagon we had, it was made by a guy in Canada. He cut the tree down in his backyard. It was black walnut.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
They're
That's
just great
amazing.
people. They're great quality. It was neat to be around, and it's taught me a lot of things about life that I still use today.
Yeah, if you want it done, you learn how to do it yourself. That's
Yeah.
such a great way to raise somebody.
Yep.
That and in racing.
I'd promote horses first.
Yeah,
but racing's been very good to me too.
But it's that same work ethic, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
we talk about that many times. I love raising my son in the industry because it's so full of very successful people that work extremely hard.
Yeah, you have to. I firmly believe that you don't get to those places unless you experience the bad, and that's unfortunate. And some young kids today, they just want to experience success, and if they don't get success, then they don't want to do it. And unfortunately, man, sometimes the success isn't there without having the bad.
Is this like the flip of the Silver Crown car at the Indiana State Fairgrounds?
Yeah, he showed me that picture this morning. I was like, oh my goodness, that's a real one right there.
What'd you want to bring that up for, Rico? You had to, didn't you? We showed horses there. I remember being there showing horses when the races were going on, and didn't even go in the grandstands to watch, but we were there for the horse show. I remember my mom lost her wedding ring in the horse stall there once, and we spent a couple days looking for it. We found it, but
oh wow.
Anyway, but
the true needle in the haystack.
So I've been around that.
Yeah.
I've been around that Indy Mile a lot of different times from a youngster, and seen the backside of that grandstand look pretty neat. And I still haven't completed a full lap at the Indy Mile on dirt, but it is what it is. So
Really? So that was lap one?
I come on the track in 1, went to speed up down the backstretch and went into 3, and the throttle didn't come back, so I drove straight into the fence and crashed. It was a big crash too, so I don't miss that in the non-wing for sure.
I heard your dad had.
He was happy about it.
Yeah, might have had something to say about it as well.
My dad always had something to say about something, not always in a negative light either. He was pretty, you knew what he was thinking. That's for sure. He was.
That's
raised that
exactly
way.
right. I would say it exactly
Both
like
good
that.
or bad, whatever
Yeah.
it may be.
Yep. No questions.
Yeah, you knew what he was thinking.
Gotta love it. We have Donny Schatz on the show. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
One of them won 3 of the first 6 races she was in, so I was just about ready to call her up and ask her what I needed to do
What
to
the
get
trick
a win.
was.
The Skinny is brought to you by General Tire. General Tire delivers. Toyota. Toyota. Let's go places. Lucas Oil. Lucas Oil. Keep that engine alive. And Fatheads Eyewear. Fatheads Eyewear. Hardcore since '04.
We're back here with Donny Schatz, the first guy to win back-to-back Kings Royal, also won the historical big one. He's won some big money over the course of his 31 years of racing. The North Dakota driver, one of the best of all time for sure, as you take a look at his stats. But moving forward, what's in the future for Donny Schatz? We have Layla in here in the studio with us. Amelia, also her sister, your nieces, as they're starting to cut their teeth and already inside of a sprint car. Are you looking at the future?
Well, we've been looking at the future a long time. That's you get left behind if you don't look into the future. So, it's I still enjoy what I do. I still love what I do. It's been a huge part of my entire family. I mean, both my parents have been a huge part of all my success with the Outlaws, and my mom thoroughly enjoys being on the merchandising side of it and the people she's met. And I've always said there's a lot of nights people come up and say, well, I can't stand you, but I really like your mom. And I'm like, well, that's great. I appreciate you coming. So
Did you buy anything?
Yeah, clearly that's the case because they like her. But, but yeah, the kids have started racing go-karts at a young age. My sister's 2 girls, and she's got 3 girls and 1 boy. And the youngest 2 don't seem to too much into it, and that's great because it's hard to keep up with 2 as it is. But they've run through go-karts, and now we got them some sprint cars and racing 305s, and one thinks she wants to run late model a little bit, so we let her try that last week, and she was pretty decent in it. But
was it your car, the late
yeah,
model?
it was my car, and she won. I think one of them won 3 of the first 6 races she was in. So I was just about ready to call her up and ask her what I needed to do
What
to
the
get a
trick
win.
was?
What am I doing wrong? But then we backed into one last weekend, so I don't have to call anymore.
I was going to say you may bring her to Charlotte with you, and the
Need to
late
bring-
model get deal.
Well, they're both going to be at Knoxville, so that'll be good. But they enjoy that. It's just you like to try to keep a handle on things. I like to have my hands on things. I like to keep control of it, and it's hard for me to keep control while I'm here, and the rest of this stuff is over here, 1,000 miles away or 800 miles away. It's just it's hard to do that in a good manner in this sport. So we're trying to keep things a little bit more controlled at the moment, and down the road we'll see what it transpires. But at this point, they're not auditioning for my job or anything like that, and I don't even know if that's something they're looking towards a career in any of this. But they thoroughly enjoy it, and they get it, and they understand it, and clearly they've paid attention to what goes on because they've both done superb jobs, in their few starts. So we'll see what it transpires into. I know I said if you guys get good, maybe I'll be your pilot. I'll be able to fly you guys where you need to go. So and maybe that's an option someday. I don't know, but highly unlikely.
By the way, how about a happy early birthday a week from today? You'll be one year older.
Is it a week today, or is it the 3rd? Yeah, it is the 3rd. Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna be 45 next week. So gonna enjoy that at Knoxville. Will be our qualifying night at Knoxville. Normally it's in years past it's been on Friday or Saturday, so it'll be on my qualifying night. So I'll just ask for a perfect night on that for my birthday and see if that transpires.
Yeah, keep the cake. Give me a trophy.
Well, you can have a birthday
Well,
week.
I'll have a cake too. No,
Yeah.
can't miss out on them sweets.
Well, one of the interesting things was, and I brought this up, I think, when Rico was in here. We were talking to him a little bit about it. I loved what Kyle Larson said about your driving. He said, hey, you guys and you two were battling it out. I can't remember. It was
Attica.
Yep. He said, you midget drivers need to watch how Donny Schatz drives. He's the cleanest driver that you can ever get next to. I was never worried for 1 minute. Clearly, meaning when he's in a midget, there's some people that really worry him about getting next to. So it's a pretty big compliment. I mean, I know Kyle looks up, has looked up to you, has looked up to Tony and a lot of others, and that's a pretty great compliment, I think.
I remember seeing Kyle when he was this tall,
Right.
and starting out and coming around the races, and we had an affiliation together with the people at Parker Stores and watched him.
Oh, geez. Okay, so
progress.
that's way
So
back.
That's way back, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to see Kyle then to see how he's progressed, yeah, you can't not be totally impressed and in awe of what he's done. Racing with him, I feel the same way about him. That way, Kyle is the kind of person he can get everything. He can get 115% out of it and still be in full control. And he doesn't race like that way with me or anybody that I've seen. So you got, it goes two ways. I could have probably used him up a few times at Attica and had a chance to win the race, but I guess I don't feel like I have to get myself to that level to where when you race for a championship, sometimes, you're going to have to run second in order to win that championship versus taking the chance and crashing two guys for the win, because there's a big spread there between the two. And that's just how I've been a long time. And, some car owners obviously want their driver to crash 10 cars a year to win a couple races. I'm just not that guy. I'm a middle-aged guy that doesn't like to bust his can any more often than he needs to, or take,
Right.
I take risks just like everybody does, but you got to do it within reason. And that's the $1 million question is what's within reason. Well, I make that decision when I'm in the car. So that's on me. And, I'm pretty appreciative of Kyle's words. It's obviously, I've heard a lot about it in the last month since we raced there. So obviously, his contribution to the sport's pretty huge, and we're pretty lucky to have him. I mean, we're getting NASCAR fans come to the races. The stands are full, whether he's there or not. But it's an added bonus for everyone when he is there.
If you were a car owner, or a sponsor, if they wanted to run that stuff, I would run them every night, because you know what? The Outlaw fan may become a fan of his, and the fan that's there to see him may become a fan of the Outlaws. I mean, it's an ecosystem, right? It works for everybody, and it's good. It's like SRX. I mean, so if you watch SRX on Saturday night, does that mean you're not going to watch NASCAR Sunday? No, clearly not. If you're that kind of race fan, that's what you're going to watch. So
absolutely, it's and that's what we all revolve around is race fans being there, race fans tuning in, race fans coming and buying T-shirts. That's what we revolve around. So we're fortunate to be living great times in the sprint car world.
I think you ought to make it a little easier, though. Park a motorhome up there for your mom. Let her vent out of the window. I was just thinking about what she has to go through in that circus that she sets up every race. So.
She enjoys it. She has a great setup, and we're pretty lucky to have all that. And she's been dedicated for a long time. So hats off, thank her for that.
Clearly raised with a great work ethic, and his approach to racing absolutely second to none. Consequently, it has yielded some awesome results along the way. Ladies and gentlemen, now you have a little bit of the skinny about Donny Schatz. Hope you enjoyed the show. See you next week.